This is a brief video tutorial on how to annotate photographs or artworks. I've chosen two different ones. They're both people reading. I also decided to print out an actual paper to draw my annotations on. I thought it'd be the easiest to show it to you doing it this way. If you do have a printer and you want to print it out and actually draw on it, you're welcome to. Otherwise, you can easily make the annotations and the notes that you need on the actual photograph. So maybe you have a drawing board or Procreate. Even Canva might work if you want to upload the artwork and do annotations there. The second note is I'm going to show you 4 different strategies. I want you to do each of the 4, but do each of the 4 on 4 different pictures of the artwork. So I only have 1 copy of each just for the fact of saving paper. But in the future, you should have 1 annotation on leading lines, 1 on foreground, middle ground, and background, 1 where you're looking at gaze, and 1 with the different shapes. So we're going to start with the first one, which is leading lines. We talked about this last year in class in grade 10 when we talked about futurism and making compositions, but it's the idea that the artist intentionally places and positions different things in a composition to guide our eye. So just spend a few minutes and look at the artwork that you're choosing and think about the path that your eye makes as it goes through this artwork. Now, of course, there's some lines like this one that are straight, or there's another line like this that's straight. There's lots of horizontal lines throughout this painting. That's something that we can notice and analyze, okay? So there's examples of 3. I also noticed that there's a lot of angles at this drawing, or this painting. So there's one that ends, there's one that goes here, there's one here, there's angles. Maybe yours doesn't have that many angles. Often there's elements that are repeated throughout. So there's lots of shapes that are repeated, so the rectangles, lots of different sharp angles throughout the painting. So just take some time and look at your drawing and figure out what you notice. I also noticed that there's a line here that goes from the edge of her dress to the top of the head. So this one's more, it's invisible, it's implied. But if we were to take a ruler, it would perfectly line up to where the skirt and the head and the hand meet. That's an example of an applied line. So here we have lots of simple lines and angles, actual lines, and implied lines. So take a few moments to find the implied lines in your artwork. The second thing I want you to annotate is foreground, middle ground, and background. Hopefully these terms are familiar. If not, maybe take some time to look them up so that you become more familiar with it. But the foreground refers to things that are in the very front of the artwork. Okay, the middle ground are the things that are in the middle, and the background is the very last layer in a painting. So I'd like you to go through your artwork and label each of the grounds. There might be multiple, there could be another. The first foreground in my example is this woman reading. I'm just gonna do 1 foreground. I often like to start with the last layer next, just because it's easier to identify the middle ground once we find the background. So I know that the wall, it ends here. That's the last layer. So this is the background. And then that means that The middle ground is this table because the woman is in front of the table, but the table is in front of the wall or the background. So this is the middle ground. Take some time to label the different grounds in your painting. If you're using a sculpture or piece of architecture, you might not have these different grounds. That's okay. Do your best and label what you have. The next section that I'd like to point out is gaze. Now, you're only going to have gaze if you have people in your artwork, but it's always important to acknowledge what a person is doing or where they're looking. This one's easy because the woman is looking down at the book. So I just like to take an arrow and draw an arrow going where the person's eyes are looking. If there's multiple people, take the time to look at each of the people and notice where they're gazing. An artist sometimes uses gazing or how a person in the artwork is looking to help guide our eyes around an artwork. So take some time and annotate that. In this one, the woman is gazing down at the book. In the one we did prior, actually this woman is also looking down at her book. You can't quite see her eyes, but you can tell by the angle of her head that she's looking in this direction. Now the final section that I want to bring up is shapes. Sometimes artists intentionally build their compositions with shapes, and it's our job to break it down and notice what they've made it out of. Now, for the artwork that I've chosen, I see the woman as a triangle. So I would just take the triangle and draw it over where I see those different lines meeting. Might be a bit hard to see my pen. You can definitely tell kind of by her elbow where her head is in this line here that it makes a triangle. I do have a few examples of annotated shapes in the sample slides that I posted on our assignment. If you're still having a bit of confusion in understanding how shapes are found in compositions, you can look up the golden triangle, golden means. Those different terms would help you understand how to recognize these different shapes in artwork. You can also ask me. If you're unsure, it never hurts to just send me a message and check your work.